the radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. The radical. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Sunday night. I hope you have all had a fantastic weekend and are looking forward to a good week. Unfortunately, I have a lot of bad news for you today, so I hope I don't cause massive depression before the week even begins. We'll get to that. Anyway, where do we even start? Right? There's so much going on, so much in the news, so much depressing stuff happening in the world out there, and it really is all over the place. And I was thinking over the weekend, it's got to be something we all can do. There's got to be something we can do because, as far as I can tell, just from looking out at the world, and I'm not old, but I've been around for a while and been following the news for a while, and stuff like that. Jennifer went to the beach yesterday. How do you go to the beach in Michigan? I guess the Great Lakes. Cool. All right. I was at the beach. Yeah, I was at the beach yesterday too. Beach was really, really nice. Really nice. All right. So I'm looking at the world today, and it's so depressing. And I don't remember it being this dark and this bleak ever. I mean, I thought 2008 was pretty bad, and certainly there've been periods over the last, and the 70s were really, really bad. In many respects, the 70s were worse than right now. But it just seems like there's this accumulation of bad stuff that I don't think we've ever seen before. And really, even in the 70s, as bad as the left was in the 70s, the left was nowhere near as bad as it is today, and the right was nowhere near as bad as it is today. So even though economically and socially and culturally and crime-wise and a bunch of other existential realities in some senses were worse in the 1970s, the political parties, the intellectual atmosphere, the intellectual life of America was nowhere near as bad as it is today. I mean, and it's particularly right now. I mean, look at what's going on in the world right now. I mean, we've got, in America right now, we've got, corona spreading like wildfire. I mean, this started in March. We should have got our act together in February. We've known about this since January. And here we are in June, going on July, and nobody knows what the hell they're doing. We're kind of testing, 500,000 tests. We should probably be at 2 million or something like that. The President of the United States wants to test less because there are fewer cases, because I guess there's a scorecard, and if you minimize the cases, then you win. But we're testing 500,000. I guess that's up from where it was, but it's still way less than what it should be. We're not doing tracing, or not doing tracing well, in spite of having, 5 months to figure this out. We're not doing tracing. There's no leadership, zero, zilch, nothing. No leadership. Nobody's talking about it. They talk about closing this, closing that, opening this, opening that, but there's no leadership about what should be done, what can be done, other than to shut everything down. There's no rallying people around social distancing, rallying people around tracing, rallying people around isolating people who test positive, rallying people around maybe even wearing masks. In the country, masks have become a political issue, not a healthcare issue, a political issue. If you're a Republican, you don't wear masks. If you're a real man, you don't wear masks. Yet if you're a leftist, you shame everybody else about wearing a mask and about not wearing a mask. And it's nuts. Science is out the window. Facts are out the window. And all we have now, all we have is just hysteria. Then you've got, so this is Corona. It's out of control, right? The Europeans won't let us visit. Who knows for how long? Because coronavirus is out of control in the United States. Now, it might be a weaker strain, and what really looks like is happening is it's affecting young people, and young people affected less, so they're not dying. But hospitalization is way up in Arizona. Hospitalization is way up in Houston, Texas. Hospitalization is up in other parts, in Florida and other parts of the country. This is not going to end well. This is a real virus, and you need to take it seriously. And yes, shutdowns are not. Whoops. What was that? Shutdowns are not the appropriate thing to do, but it's real. It's not a pretend. It's not a game, and I don't think it's that difficult to deal with. But you got to deal with it, and nobody wants to deal with it, or the only way they want to deal with it is by authoritarian measures, i.e., shutdowns. And nobody wants to talk about the nuance. Nobody wants to talk about young people versus old people. 45% of all the deaths so far in coronavirus have happened in nursing homes. I mean, I remember in early March talking about the need to isolate the elderly. In early March, Amish Adalja was talking about cocooning the elderly, separating them from society. We still haven't even managed to do that. So a massive failure, on historical levels, failure of leadership at the federal level, and then it's being left to the states, and there's a massive, massive failure of leadership at the state level. Then you look around on television or on YouTube or Twitter or whatever during the weekend, and you see the riots keep going on. And there's no stop. Monuments are being tumbled. Police stations being attacked. I saw this video of these Antifa-looking types literally attacking a police station. And the police station, this is how, I laugh, but this is how absurd this is. The police station is literally boarded up to protect it. And the police are hunkered down inside the police station. And I don't know, it looks like a dozen maybe Antifa guys are throwing, trying to set it a light and trying to, attack this police station. And the police are hunkered down inside. Too afraid, I guess, to go out and confront these idiots. Literally, violence is tolerated today in American streets. The police are hunkered down in the police station, afraid for themselves. Or whatever, or afraid of being sued because they might rough up a hooligan. Police are backing off, are retreating. You can attack, you can destroy, you can vandalize, police are not going to get involved. Now, I know this is not everywhere, but in civilized, one would think, cities like Portland, Oregon, that's what's going on. The police are boarding up police stations. We know that in Seattle, they basically abandoned the police station and let the mob take it over and take the whole 6 blocks around the police station for their own. Call that Chaz or Chop or whatever the hell they call it. I mean, it's just a culture of weakness, of mob violence, of anarchy, of no rule of law. And then you've got, on the left, you've got this cancel culture. You've got this culture where if you say the wrong thing, or if you said the wrong thing sometime in your past, if you made the wrong joke, did the wrong thing, then it wipes out everything. Any value, any virtue you might have done is wiped out. And you must be fired, destroyed, canceled. We saw that with J.K. Rowling, but you see it almost every day on Twitter. You see it every day with celebrities. You see it every day with renaming of places. And some of the renaming I'm kind of happy for. Not for the reasons, but I'm kind of happy for. The fact that I think one of the universities is renaming the Woodrow Wilson School of something. I mean, Woodrow Wilson was, in my view, one of the worst presidents ever. And a racist, a real racist, a certified racist. So I am happy to see Woodrow Wilson gone in the trash bin of history. By the way, there's some comments on my comments about the presidents in what do you call it? In the mountain, you know, where they carved out the 4 presidents. As you know, names of things escape me. Yeah, Wilson sucked. Somebody wants me to experiment on how I talk to the microphone. They don't want me to get close. But I thought it's not peaking anymore. I thought that the sound is not peaking anymore. Because I've lowered the threshold a lot, so it shouldn't peak. So even if I go in and out, is that just that the volume is changing and you don't like that? Anyway, Mount Rushmore, and I said I didn't like Mount Rushmore, and I didn't like it because of the presidents that it illustrated then. Really, my real objection is only to one of those presidents, which is Teddy Roosevelt. I think Teddy Roosevelt was one of the worst, most evil, horrific presidents in American history. Him and Woodrow Wilson. Wilson wasn't a pacifist. Wilson got us into World War I. Pacifists don't get you into world wars where tens of thousands of Americans die. So, yeah, cancel culture. And business. Businessmen, the one area of sanity in American culture. The fact that you go to work, you're judged by your ability. You're judged by how productive you are. You have to make a profit. Business now is selling out en masse. Black Lives Matter here, Black Lives Matter there. Turning off advertising in Facebook because Facebook's not tough enough on certain issues. You know, Starbucks just announced they're not advertising anymore, and a bunch of other firms are not at Unilever. They're not advertising in Facebook and Twitter and all these other places because they don't limit what is expressed on these platforms enough. They need a limit, and we know they don't limit in which direction, right? Yeah, I'm not going to comment too much on Teddy Roosevelt. I'll just say that I hate him. If you're interested in my views on Teddy Roosevelt, please feel free to ask me in the Super Chat, and I'll do it later. Got lots of questions in the Super Chat already for the future, but always ready to get more. If you're interested in my views on Woodrow Wilson, Teddy Roosevelt, or any other president, happy to provide them. But Teddy Roosevelt is a particular pet peeve of mine. Rational pet peeve, not some emotionalist nonsense. In other words, what we're seeing right now, which is much worse than the 60s and much worse than the 70s, is we're seeing the intellectual dominance of an authoritarian left. A left that's not interested in free speech, that's not interested in intellectual debate, that is not interested in peace, is not interested in democracy, even in a sense of voting, but is interested in cramming down their views down our throats and using whatever authoritarian means they have in order to institute their ideas. And while I don't think they represent the Democratic Party yet, they are a growing influence within the Democratic Party. They are a growing influence. This authoritarianism is a growing influence within one of the two major political parties in the United States. This is the new left of the 60s on steroids. I'm so happy Ayn Rand is not alive today to see it. I mean, not really, because I would love to have her guidance and her insight. But if she thought the new left of the 60s was bad, this is so much worse and so much more destructive, so much more authoritarian, and so much more popular and prevalent than I think the New Left was in the 1960s. And remember, the New Left in the 1960s was demonstrating against something legitimate as well. Originally, the Vietnam War, just as the left today is demonstrating against something legitimate, racism. But it's gone way beyond that. And it's become where you have to follow a particular party line. And it's getting worse and worse. And all you have to do is really listen to the leaders of Black Lives Matter and see how intellectually corrupt they are. And ultimately, as a consequence, how intellectually, how evil the movement has to be. I don't think everybody who supports the movement, just like with environmentalism, I don't think everybody who supports environmentalism is bad, because I think most people just care about clean air and clean water, and they think that's what environmentalism represents. I think the same is true of many people who say they support Black Lives Matter. They think they're supporting anti-racism, but they don't realize how racist the anti-racists are. They don't realize how completely wacko, how completely detached from reality, how completely emotionalist and detached from anything American the movement actually is, just like the environmentalist movement. So the left has become super authoritarian, violent, destructive. It's much more explicitly, it's always been much more explicitly anti-capitalist. But more than ever, it's a racist left. And it's becoming more and more anti-Western civilization and every aspect of civilization. This is why I titled the show today, the civilization crumbles. Because the left now is anti-civilization. Anti-everything that civilization represents. Remember, that civilization is built, in my view, on two pillars. Modern civilization, real civilization, Western civilization, is built on two pillars. One is reason, the efficaciousness of reason. The idea that reason is our means of knowledge. The idea of reason is the arbiter of truth. Reason based on facts, based on reality, based on logic. Using one's mind. Well, that has been rejected for a long time by the left, but more so now than ever. Now it's about emotion. If you listen to my show on what was it, white fragility, then there was no reason used there. All appeal to emotion. All appeal to emotion. There's no respect for reality, for facts, and certainly no respect for logic or even consistency. It's an appeal to emotion. And the left has become completely dominated by emotion. Now, again, there is a more rational left, but it is silent. It has been silenced. Because if the more rational left speaks out, whether it's, I don't know, even somebody like Brett Weinstein or Steven Pinker, then they are canceled. They don't count. I mean, you saw what happened to Brett Weinstein at Evergreen College. He's, thrown out. And has he found another job? He was an unbelievably successful, well-published intellectual of the left, but in science, biology. And has he found another job in academia? No. He's been canceled by the left. You can't challenge their wacky ideas and survive. And of course, the first people they purify the movement from are the people on their side, are the people on the left. They're the first ones to go. Then they get around to everybody else. Now, this is the problem, and this is what makes me pessimistic. All right, so the left's wacky. Great. Big deal. What's new about that? It's more wacky than it's ever been. But it's been pretty bad for a long time. It's just gotten worse, consistently worse. but many people who I know who agree with me on my analysis of the left, at least in essentials. The solution is to gravitate to the right, to join forces with the right. Whether it's the right of Trump, whether it's the right of conservatives, whether it's the right of the alt-right, whatever the right is, jump in to bed with the right, because the right is the only alternative to the left. It's the only alternative to the left. So we jump in. We jump in and deal with the right. But what do you find on the right when you look at it? And this is where it gets really depressing. And again, I've talked about this before. What you find is, again, no respect for the individual. A rising influence. And rising is a minimize the issue. Somebody says George Will. No, you don't find George Will on the right. George Will has been marginalized. George Will has been canceled. Just like the left cancels people. The right does the same. And George Will has been canceled because he's an anti-Trump right. What you find on the right is statists. What you find on the right is Josh Hawley. Religious, statist, anti-free speech, anti-technology, a longing for simpler life, a longing for, I heard this new term today, Brad Thompson enlightened me with it. It's called front porch republic. A longing for just a simple life of doing a job and sitting on the front porch and drinking lemonade, a nostalgia for the 1950s, but not even the 1950s of industrializing America, the 1950s of rural America, of just relaxing and being with family and being segregated. The same kind of nostalgia that we saw in Germany in the 19th century to a pre-capitalist world where there were no cities, where we just had little villages. Well, boring and stagnating and going nowhere and tradition-bound and collectivistic and that's what German Romanticism was, a longing to go back to nature and go back to the greatness of the German people when we lived in little tribes and little villages, and a resentment of capitalism with its cities and with its industries and with its progress and with its economic success. None of that. Go to hell. We don't want that. And most of all, a resentment of individualism, which is at the core of capitalism. What you get on the right now is complete statism and collectivism and tribalism, and then you've got the alt-right or the BAP right. BAP is the Bronze Age pervert who long for aristocracy and long for physical action and long for physicality, action, violence, a barbarism of the Bronze Age. A barbarism, a physicality over anything intellectual. And a return of inequality, political inequality. I'm all for economic inequality, but they want political inequality. They want some people to be better than others. They want aristocracy. This is the BAP conservatives. And you could argue the Bronze Age pervert, that's just a side group, nobody follows him. He's not got a lot of followers on Facebook or Twitter or whatever. But if you look at who the followers are, the PhDs or PhD students in political science, Straussians, well-known academics, or people striving to be well-known academics. This is a new generation of the intellectual leadership of the right is attracted to this nonsense. And then you've got the right abandoning capitalism. The Tucker Carlson right, in the name of nationalism. Attacking corporations, attacking finance, attacking everything. Yeah, Tucker Carlson's good on Black Lives Matter. Good for Tucker. He stands up to them. But in the name of what? In the name of an ideology almost equally as bad, equally as destructive. And do we want to side with that right in order to protect ourselves and defeat the evil left? Do we choose one evil over another evil? Because what? They're more civilized? They used to be pro-capitalism? They're not quite as socialist? They're just fascist? They don't quite destroy as many and as much? Really? And of course they want to protect monuments. Monuments to slave owners. Monuments to slave traders. Monuments to defenders of slavery. This is the right we want to team up with? And then when you learn, because this right, to some extent, is governing right now. This right is Donald Trump. And when you see what kind of president we have, and I'm not going to get into the ignorance and stupidity because that's not relevant, but just the lack of any respect for American values, the lack of any respect for what America means, the lack of any respect for individualism. I see the screen goes black once in a while. I've got a new piece of equipment coming in this week to hopefully solve this problem. We'll take one problem at a time. If you read Bolton's book, a president who the right admires and respects and grovels before and just thinks he is fantastic, and whenever I attack them, I've got Trump derangement syndrome, of course, because I dare to attack this guy. Somebody who would sell out American interests in order to get reelected. Somebody who grovels and loves and licks the boots of every dictator out there in the world, from North Korea to Russia to Turkey to China. And people think he's tough on China, which is a joke, as if you read Bolton's book you would discover. I don't know if you heard, but this Russian bounty thing is interesting. We'll see how much legs it have and how true it is. But it turns out that Russian intelligence has told the Taliban that they'll pay them for killing Americans. Or not killing Americans or anybody from the coalition, the Western coalition forces. And that Trump knew about this, although he denies it, that the American intelligence services told him about this, and he's done nothing about it, said nothing about it, not confronted Putin or anybody else about it. Because he loves Putin. So we have an authoritarian left, and we have an authoritarian loving right. We have a right, if you follow kind of legal thought, we have a right now that is saying, to hell with originalism. Originalism, textualism, all this stuff, Gorsuch, these are bad judges. What we need is a common good, traditionalist jurisprudence. We need judges who value the common good, but not in the common good in the leftist sense, the common good in the rightist sense, whatever the hell the difference is there. Who believe in traditional values and are willing, no matter what the Constitution says. This is a major conservative legal thinker at Harvard is saying, and many people are following this and agreeing with him. We need to dump the Constitution in a sense. What we need is people who are willing to do what the left has done, but do it on the right. To legislate from the bench, but legislate for conservative values. Whatever those are, left, Yeah, here's Mark. Vote for Trump. The left is tearing down the foundations of this country on live TV, and all Yaron can do is scream Orange Man bad. I've never called him Orange Man, although he is, but I've never called him Orange Man. But this is the kind of quality of debate. This is exactly what I'm warning you of. The left is horrible. The left is tearing down the foundations of the country, no question. So let's embrace the right, which is going to rip apart the foundations of this country. And I give evidence. I give long lists of all the things that the right does. I can quote you from articles. I can show you the dominant think tanks on the right today, American Compass, American Mind, Look at even traditionalist, publications, and how they have turned anti-American. And all they can do is, oh my God, the left is bad. The left is bad. I spent, 20 minutes on the left. But if you run to the right, you will encounter the same evil. Just maybe more sophisticated and playing it more civil. And more pretending to be civilized and pretending to care about Western civilization. But it's the foundation of Western civilization, a reason in individualism. And the left, I explained, is abandoned reason, certainly abandoned individualism in the name of identity politics. What has the right done? What has the right done? John Bolton's book, what has the right done? The right rejects reason in the name of religion and rejects individualism in the name of its own form of collectivism, in its own form of nationalism, in its own form of tribalism. And you want to prefer one tribe over another, one collectivist over another, one anti-reason over another. You are the betrayers of the Enlightenment. You are the betrayers of Ayn Rand, and you're betraying the ideas of reason and individualism by embracing the right. If you can criticize your God, Donald Trump, if you have been so lobotomized by Donald Trump that you can't say anything and you can't criticize the right and you don't see the evil that is building up in the right, that is going to destroy this country, then you deserve what you're going to get. And you're going to get it. Oh my God, are you going to get it? And yeah, you should all read John Bolton's book. Because John Bolton is showing you how America, the foundations of this country, are being destroyed not on the streets of Seattle, not on the streets of Portland, not on the streets of Chicago, but it is being destroyed inside the White House. Brick by brick, Donald Trump is doing away with the foundations of this country, is destroying this country. In the name of what? His narcissism and your mindlessness. If you think that's irrelevant, that the President of the United States is groveling before the President of China, that the President of the United States sees no wrong in Putin, the dictator of Russia, that he admires the dictatorship in Turkey, they refuse to hold to account the Iranians for what they have done in spite of saying it over and over and over again, that he would, and yet refuses to do it. John Bolton's not lying because everything he says can be verified from other sources. Nothing he says in the book is surprising. I want war with Iran. And Trump claimed he wanted war with Iran. He wanted to hold them accountable for violating the nuclear agreement. And he said he would go to war with them for that. Why didn't he? They're clearly in violation. They've been killing American troops for 20 years. So we're supposed to roll over and pretend we're dead. Why? Because Donald Trump said so? Every Republican who voted for Donald Trump before this election said they wanted to hold Iran accountable. But suddenly, because Donald Trump doesn't want to go to war, everybody is pro-Iranian now. I've been pro-Iran war since 9/11. Actually, since much before, since they took hostages of the American embassy in November 4th, 1979. That's when we should have gone to war with Iran, because that is a declaration of war. So it is nutty to me that you guys think that in order to defeat collectivism and irrationality of the left, you're going to embrace and marry and defend and protect the irrationality and collectivism of the right. I'm here to say what is needed is a new movement. What is needed is a new way of thinking. What is needed is to reject explicitly, loudly, and in numbers, both the left and the right. I said on a show the other day that revolutions are for young people, and I hold for that. But it's time, people, not for an armed revolution, but it's time for a movement. a political, cultural movement. The Black Lives Matter, the Proud Boys, whatever you want to hell they call it on the right. A movement that is not left or right. A movement that is pro the ideas of the future. A movement that protects the individual, his freedom, his dignity, equality before the law, a true anti-racist movement, and a true pro-individualism movement. A movement that captures the spirit of liberty of this country. The spirit of I can do anything, I can achieve anything. I'm not going to sit on my ass and wait for things to get better. I'm going to make them better. I'm not going to sit and wait for a job. I'm going to go get a job. I'm not going to sit and wait for my life to improve. I am going to take my life into my own hands and make it better. Not because Donald Trump told me, not because the left told me, but because it's my life. And that kind of America doesn't stand still while the two main political parties rot at their core. Americans like that don't sit and wait for something to happen in politics to solve their problems. What America needs today is a new movement. And it has to be of young people. It has to be you guys. You've got to start organizing. You've got to start coming together. In the name of not of Biden or of Trump, not Democrats, not Republicans, in the name of reason and individualism. And yeah, reason is a little abstract. But in the name of facts, in the name of reality, in the name of the individual, in the name of freedom. You got to start standing up for your future, your freedom. And all of you who are voting right now to leave, good, leave. We don't want you. What we want in this new movement are people who will stand up for freedom and capitalism, for individualism. People who will stand up against racism. Because racism is collectivism and the most barbaric form of collectivism. A movement that takes an approach of science to COVID, not status science, not panicked science, not hysteria science, actual real science. And I've said this before, it's on you. Stop sitting around and complaining, bitching. Start getting together. Use social media. Use any mechanism you have. And start advocating for your ideas. Or at least what I think your ideas are, if you listen to the show. The ideas of liberty. The ideas of freedom. Yes, the ideas of the founding fathers, but maybe we need to get away from the historical reference. Maybe we need a future reference. The ideas that will make this country great. Forget again. Forget history. Focus on where we can go. Embrace technology. Love technology. Embrace tech. Love tech. Silicon Valley is our friend, not because they're politically aligned, but because they create the products that make the future possible. They create the products that will make your life better in the future. Embrace that. Use that. Challenge them to join you. We should be a movement for economic growth, against stagnation, against front porch Republicans, against tradition, against religion. A movement that advocates for the individual. It doesn't have to be an objectivist movement. You can have plenty of disagreement within on how to apply it exactly, and what role exactly should the state play, and how big and how small or whatever. Oh my God, I said bye-bye founding fathers. I know that's going to be a big deal, right? But the point is, people have tried to use the founding fathers angle over and over again. I'm not sure it works anymore. Let's think about projecting a future of success, a future of prosperity, a future of riches, a future that we would all love to live in. And let's try to inspire the people around us. Inspire the people of this country towards what is possible to them. Instead, yeah, go ahead. Go join your collectivistic, anti-enlightenment, anti-reason, alt-right BS. That's the alternative. The right, which is wacky, the left, which is wacky, or start fresh, start new. Embrace the idea of revolution that the Founding Fathers started. And primarily, the Founding Fathers' revolution is an intellectual one. It is a challenge to the world. It is a challenge to tradition. It is a challenge to the thinking of the time. What we need is a new enlightenment, a renaissance. But again, I'd rather focus on the future, say enlightenment. A new enlightenment, focused on how great the world can be, how great life can be, that embraces, again, technology of all kinds. Technology to make the world a better place. To make our lives as individuals better. To embrace freedom. To embrace debate. To embrace free speech. Wow, what radical ideas are these? So I don't know, it's hard for me to tell how many people out there actually want this. But if they're a few, movements start small. And I'm not going to be the one who does the work. You guys have to do the work. Yeah. Bitcoin isn't capitalism. Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency. Capitalism is a system. Bitcoin is not a system. It's just a thing. Ugh. You guys have to find ways to organize. You guys have to find ways. Learn from the left. Learn from the alt-right. I love that I'm getting all this hate, but people are using money in the super chat to actually give money that goes directly into my pocket, or into my company's pocket, in order to promote hatred of me and my ideas. That's great. You've got fascism 2020 or Marx 2020. That's the choice that you have. You choose. You embrace fascism, you will die and sink. And when you're in that quicksand, sinking and begging for help, good luck. Good luck. Yeah, I'm sure you inherited a lot of money, Mark, because you sure ain't produced it. But please keep sending it my way. That's great. I'm happy with that. So it's the only solution, guys. We can give in, and there are lots of ways to give in. One way to give in is to embrace the left. I don't think anybody here is going to do that. Another way to give in is to embrace the right. I think many of you are tempted by that, and some of you already have embraced the right and are members of it. A third option is to not do anything, which I think most of us are inclined towards. It's easy. Just let's sit around, bitch and complain, and let the world burn, which is what's happening right now. The world is burning. From the inside, from the outside, inside the White House, outside the White House, the world is burning. Or you can do something about it. And what exactly you do about it, you guys need to think about. Some of you entrepreneurs out there need to become activists, entrepreneurs. We need an option. We need a third alternative, and we won't get it in this election. You won't get an alternative candidate in this election. But maybe if you start a movement now, if you start talking now about a movement of personal responsibility, real personal responsibility, not the schmaltzy, shallow personal responsibility of the conservatives, but a real personal responsibility. If you start now, there is hope. But again, if you just pretend everything's okay, just go about your business, then it won't. At the end of the day, it's about personal responsibility. The extent to which you, as an individual, are responsible for your own future. And your own future includes the culture, the civilization in which you live. And you have to make a choice. Are you going to sit aside and watch civilization burn, watch civilization crumble, or are you going to do something about it? I mean, Mark Pellegrino's American Capitalist Party, somebody mentions that, is a good start, but it has no energy behind it. It has no fire there. There's nothing more. Mark, to a large extent, is waiting for you guys to join. To take what he's created, a platform, an agenda, and run with it. And maybe the Capitalist Party's agenda is too radical for a large-scale movement. But there has to be a third alternative to what we're seeing in the world right now. There has to be. We're too good for Biden versus Trump. We're too good for Black Lives Matter versus the alt-right. We're too good for identity politics of the left and national conservatives on the right. America is too good for this. We need a political, cultural alternative. And it's on you guys to start that ball rolling. And you can do it. You can start it just like everybody else does on Twitter, on Facebook. You can start groups. You can start organizing. You can go and demonstrate. You can do all kinds of stuff. All kinds of stuff. But you got to act. You got to act. It used to be, I used to say, politics. Forget about politics. But as I mentioned the other day, politics is everywhere. Politics is in our life, in every aspect of life, in every place of our life. You can't live without politics trying to interfere with what you are and who you are. And you have got to find a way to broaden your movement and grow it and make it a cultural force. Oh, my God. Okay, let's see. By the way, Super Chat, you can ask all these, anything you want on this Super Chat. Thanks, Linda. I appreciate it. What are prisons for? Keeping the public safe, rehabilitating inmates, purely for revenge. I mean, I don't call it revenge, but punishment. They're for justice. The primary purpose of prisons is justice. You have exhibited behavior that warrants your exclusion from human affairs. And therefore, you're jailed. It's not a matter of revenge. It's a matter of, this is the just thing that needs to be done. You violated rights, your rights are restrained or restricted. Now, in addition to that, it's for keeping the public safe. But it's not for rehabilitation. And it's not for revenge, for some emotion. Primary role for prisons is justice and to keep bad people away from good people. Bad people in the sense of acted on it, right? Criminals. Hey, Yaron, Candace Owen interviewed Mark Lamont Hill. I don't know who that is. You should check it out. They didn't agree on anything. They didn't agree on anything. But both had decent points. Also, her husband said he loves Atlas Shrugged, so maybe there's hope. Whose husband? Candace's? Maybe there's hope. It's always good to have hope. But we also have to be realistic. We can't wait for Candace Owen to come around. And when she comes around, she'll become a lot less popular. So it's our job to articulate the ideas and go out there and push them. It's our job to let the world know that there is an option to the wacky left and the wacky right. Trump has a record economy, 40 million Americans unemployed. I mean, some of these people are really funny. This is a $5 comment. This is great. I mean, what would a $50 comment be? I mean, how idiotic can you get? 40 million Americans are unemployed right now. The economy shrunk at 5% rate, will shrink at double digits in the second quarter, and this is a record economy. Before this all happened, the United States economy was growing at a 2% rate under Donald Trump. 2%? That's a laughing stock. If you had told anybody before that the greatest economy the United States will ever have is a 2% growth, I mean, that's a joke. That's a leftist economy, which is what Trump is. He's a leftist. The left is horrible. The Black Lives Matter is worse than Trump. Worse than Trump. But Trump is really, really, really bad. So you want to take something a little bit less than bad? Instead of fighting for what you actually believe in, you actually want to embrace, just less bad than BLM. That's good. All right. There you are. Your standards are BLM evil, a little less evil. That's okay. That will not just support, will praise to the hilt. And then Joe says Trump is getting us to a gold standard. I mean, Trump is literally, I coined this term earlier, literally lobotomized people. People do not have the capacity to think once they become Trump supporters. He completely eviscerates their ability to think critically about anything. About anything. The stock market did much better under Bill Clinton than under Donald Trump. So is Bill Clinton a great president? The stock market did pretty well under Obama from 2009 onwards. Does that make him a good president? And the stock market has not done very well overall over the long period of time under Donald Trump. Thank you, Corey. Appreciate it. All right, we've got a lot of Super Chat questions, so you might want to slow down because I'm not sure I'll ever catch up here. We'll keep going. Oh my God! Slow down, guys. Yeah, I'm okay. Ayn Rand is canceled. You should look at how the right writes about Ayn Rand. The worst review of Ayn Rand ever, of Atlas Shrugged, ever printed was the one in the National Review under Bill Buckley. And if you go today, see how Brad Thompson is treated by the Claremont Review of Books, and how conservatives are treating Brad's critique of some of their thinking, and how Ayn Rand is treated by these people. Yes, embrace your enemy. Love your enemy. Turn the other cheek. That is what Marx objectivism looks like. He's become an all-out Christian. He loves the conservatives who hate Ayn Rand, who he claims that he loves. I love getting it on with people who attack me and send me money at the same time. It's great. All right, in the 1980s and 90s, the left felt they lost their stranglehold over the country. How did they get it back? Well, but they only lost their stranglehold over politics. And they did. They lost their stranglehold over the political agenda because of Reagan. And then the agenda that markets basically work, that markets are good, that you don't want to overregulate, you don't want to have a tax, you don't want to overburden markets. That was the agenda of Bill Clinton. That was the agenda of the Labour Party in the UK. Basically, Thatcher and Reagan had won the kind of political debate in the 1980s. And even the left parties all over Europe and I think in the United States, the Democrats turned towards a mixed economy tilted a little bit more towards free markets. How did they, but they always had the universities. They'd always had a stranglehold on the universities and on the schools and on our, on our every part of our educational system. So they never they never lost a stranglehold over the culture. They lost a stranglehold over politics, in particular over the attack on capitalism. The way they got it back is twofold. One, the right's pathetic attempt to defend capitalism, inability to defend it, particularly morally, but inability to defend it properly, so that the right was kind of lame. Yeah, it works. That was their defense. So then when it didn't work, and I would say the turning point there was really 2008, the financial crisis. When suddenly the mixed economy didn't work, and suddenly even the right embraced the idea that capitalism caused the financial crisis, that was it. The left was re-emboldened politically, reinvigorated politically. Of course, Obama won the election as a consequence of that. And the left went on. Now, Obama didn't govern as far left as the leftists would have liked. And the economy didn't grow very much, and working class people supposedly suffered economically under Obama and then under Trump. Wages didn't rise that fast. And again, who was to blame? Well, capitalism. And who admitted that it was capitalism? Well, Obama, obviously, and the left. But then Trump runs a campaign basically saying, free markets caused this. Free markets caused the plight of the working class. Trade caused the plight of the working class. Tucker Carlson tells them private equity causes plight of the working class. Wall Street causes plight of the working class. Immigrants cause the plight of the working class. And that plays right into the left's agenda because the left agrees with all of that. They agree that private equity is bad. They agree that Wall Street's bad. They even agree that immigrants are bad from an economic perspective. They like the immigrants because they think they can get their vote. But they don't like immigrants on an economic perspective. Bernie Sanders was the only leftist politician honest enough to say that he hated immigrants, that he didn't want more immigration, because it was bad for the workers. So the way they got the stranglehold back on the politics of this country is through the financial crisis. And the right abandoning all attempt at that point to defend capitalism. So now that you have the Tucker Carlson in the world who are as anti-capitalist as the left is. So who's there to defend capitalism? Who is going to defend capitalism? Who defends free markets? Who defends free trade? Nobody. A few, libertarian or free market leaning economists, but that's it. I mean, trade deals are bad. Why is he now considering tariffs on aluminum from Canada? Why has that got to do with China? Every time you talk about trade, everybody goes to China. Then why is he talking about tariffs on automobiles from Europe? Why is he talking about tariffs imposed tariffs on steel from Brazil? What are you guys talking about? Why didn't he completely renegotiate NAFTA instead of just tinkering with NAFTA and making it more palatable for the left? NAFTA was ultimately negotiated by Pelosi. Just read up about it. Basically Mnuchin caved to everything Pelosi wanted so we could get NAFTA 1.1, not even a 2.0. What trade deals? Trump is anti-trade and anti-immigration. It's just like when I said, no, Trump is anti-immigration, everybody said, he's anti-illegal immigration. Well, now we know. He just signed this thing. What did he just sign? He signed a ban on all immigration, including legal. Why? To help the American worker, which is the leftist argument from the beginning of time. So no, Trump is anti-immigration, anti-trade, as is the new right. All you have to do is listen to Tucker Carlson. Or, even better, I know you don't really read, but go and look up the conservative journals like American Compass, like First Things, and go read or look at some of the conferences and the speeches given by national conservatives, and you can see that they oppose capitalism, they oppose trade, they want everything built in the U.S. Just listen to Navarro, listen to the Trump administration. Don't project your views onto them. Actually listen to what they say and follow what they do. Somebody says, why are you surprised? I'm not really surprised. I'm surprised at the number of people on this chat who are completely nuts. Yeah, the left is brainwashing kids with propaganda in universities and rewriting history. And so is Tucker Carlson. So is Tucker Carlson. I bemoan both. This is the difference. You guys want to buy into the propaganda of the right. You guys want to buy into the evil of the right instead of criticizing both, as I do. I criticize both. I spent the whole first part of this show criticizing the left and then shifted to criticizing the right because the fact is they're both bad. Both bad. Both evil. Both need to be rejected. Tucker Carlson is controlled opposition. Oh my God. Wake up, people. You are leading us into Armageddon and you don't even know it. And you're going to do it running into your graves because you're defending the world from the evil left. When the left is going to become irrelevant. Irrelevant. I know, you guys, everything is Trump. Everything's around Trump. Trump is their God. And this tells you this attitude around Trump, this attitude around criticizing Trump, expressed here on the chat, is all you really need to know about politics today in America. All you need to know. These are supposed to be people influenced by Ayn Rand, and they have been lobotomized by Donald Trump. What would regular Americans going to say? Is schizophrenia only a byproduct of evasion, Kantian epistemology, or is it overwhelmingly genetic? Well, I mean, first of all, it's a false alternative. I don't think it's just those two. I think schizophrenia is probably something that has a chemical basis that is maybe connected to genes, but I think the prevalence of it is connected to bad philosophy and bad ideas and bad culture. Right? It's not that they embrace the epistemology of Kant, it's that they live in a world that's unintelligible because of the kind of issues we see today and the kind of influence that Kant has on the. So I think it's a false dichotomy. I think it's all of the above. All of the above. Thank you, Corey. I'm trying to be on fire because I really want to motivate you guys to do something about it. Instead of these mindless idiots who just want to follow the right. I want to motivate you who are not mindless, who are not going to just come to whatever Donald Trump tells you, to actually do something about it and actually go out there and fight for your values. You've got, if you're young, if you're in, most of my listeners are 25 to 35. I think over 50% are 25 to 45. It's your future. It's your life. You've got like 60 more years of this. Go fight. Fight for your future. And don't give in to these idiots and to this zero-sum mentality of it's either the left or it's Donald Trump. That's the end of America. That is literally the end of America if that's all you can see. Now, look, with regard to schizophrenia, next time I have Gina Golan on the show, you can ask. I don't know, but I think it's a false dichotomy. I think genes have something to do with it. I think brain chemicals that could be triggered by all kinds of things have something to do with it. And I think that bad philosophy has something to do with it. There is no alternative. There is no Hitler or Karl Marx. That is not the alternative that I'm going to buy into. Not the alternative I'm going to buy into. Or Mussolini. Hitler, no, it's more Mussolini than Hitler. But Mussolini or Karl Marx, that's the alternative you want. No, it's not. It's not one I'm going to accept. Now, you guys want to accept that? Great. Fine. I'm all set in life. I'm all set in life. You guys have to fight for your future. And you guys better figure out how to do that. I'll help you. Once you figure it out, I'll help you. As I said with the revolution, I'm there to support you. But you guys have to figure out how you're going to fight. How you're going to create an alternative to fascism versus communism, which is what we're facing today. Biden is as much as a Marxist as Trump is a Mussolini. But the Republican Party is moving towards Mussolini-like ideas really, really fast, just as the Democratic Party is moving towards Marxist ideas really, really fast. And one of the real disasters that could happen, and we'll see what happens, is that Trump is such an imbecile, and I really think he's a world-class idiot in a special kind of way, that he has the potential right now, not just to lose the election, but potentially lose the election in a landslide. And not just lose the presidency, but lose the Senate in a big way. And that'll hand the left, the Marxists, the Biden, not only the presidency, but the House and the Senate. And that's a true disaster. That is really, really, really bad. And that'll be your fault. Those of you who support Trump, those of you who will not criticize him, those of you who will march with him into your graves, following him blindly. Left and right is dead. It's dead. Both are dead. And unless you're willing to start fighting for an alternative, we're all dead. Why would I move to China? God. Just to concretize this, if you become king tomorrow, people incarcerated for selling heroin and crack would be released immediately. Yes, absolutely. I would pardon everybody who sold drugs. I would pardon everybody who was arrested for possession, for sale, for use. Unless there was a violent crime entailed, murder, robbery, anything like that, I would release them. And then I would, if I became king tomorrow, I would resign. I would abdicate because I wouldn't want to impose my will on people. But if somehow the world turned to my views, absolutely. Absolutely. Who's the victim when you sell heroin? Somebody wanted heroin, you provided it to them. They're the victim, but they are self-inflicted victim. You didn't cause them to inject the heroin. Heroin is not evil. It's the person using it. Just don't you guys make that argument about guns? Guns are not evil. It's the person using them that might be evil. So, no, absolutely, I would let all those people out free. I would decriminalize or actually make legal all those drugs and allow anybody to sell them. That would create a market for them. Prices would drop. Violence would go down to the lowest it's ever been in all of human history. Not just in the United States, across the world. You would have a flood of drugs in the streets for a while, but then demand wouldn't match the supply. Prices would plummet. Organized crime would be eviscerated. By the way, I'd also legalize prostitution, legalize gambling, legalize many of the things that organized crime is built upon. Drugs would be just step number one. Right? But, and by the way, that would change the dynamics of policing in this country more than anything else that you could do for the better. Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Could that movie be viewed as as a mini rebellion against government schooling, or is it just about a slacker goofing off? I mean, I don't think it's a mini rebellion against government schooling because it's never emphasized that it's a government school. It's never emphasized maybe it's a private school. I don't know. It's about rebelling. It's about rebelling and goofing off and being stupid. It's kind of fun because teenagers do rebel. But it has nothing to do with government schools. I mean, there's no emphasis on that. There's no idea. Now, you could argue that the government schools are what make schools so boring and make schools something that you want to rebel against. But that's you bringing something into the story that doesn't exist in the film itself. So you can't, the theme of a movie can't be something that you bring to it from the outside. It has to be in the movie. It has to be projected right there. There's another question about a movie here. Let me just quickly find it. Did you see Marginal Revolution's review of Paradise? He thinks it's a misunderstood and not anti-inequality. I think he's wrong. I think he's reading stuff into that movie. That movie is so clear about what its agenda is. I did a review of it. I can't remember it enough. I might watch it again because it's well made and re-review it. But he's wrong. And I like Marginal Revolution. I often agree with them. But on the movie Paradise, this is clearly, it's a critique of everybody. It doesn't like anybody. It's not pro anybody. But it blames the condition of the poor on society and on the rich. It clearly, it's their fault that it comes to what it comes to. And it's not an accident that it's the, that it evolves the way it does, and everybody's lives are destroyed. Everybody's, not just the rich, not just the poor, because that's the state of the culture. But to position it as a pro-rich, slackers of the left is terrible. Is just wrong. I think it's just wrong. It doesn't see the movie. It doesn't see what the movie's actually telling us. Snowpiercer is interesting too, but clearly about class. Yeah, same director made Snowpiercer. It's about class oppression. Again, it's about the evil of class oppression. And the Snowpiercer, I understand there's a TV show which I want to watch, but the movie was about the futility of rebellion. That class oppression is always with us, will always be with us. That those who control the world will always control the world and do control the world. So that was the theme of Snowpiercer. Trump appears in complete freefall as GOP is turning against him, as they are afraid of losing the Senate too. A narcissist like Trump needs to save face from humiliation. What is his exit strategy? I mean, I wish he could think in terms of exit strategy. But the best thing for him is to say, I've lost interest in this job. It's not fun. It's not interesting. It's not, and I nominate Nikki Haley, or even Mike Pence, and Mike Pence picks Nikki Haley for vice president, and then I would actually vote for them over Joe Biden. I'd vote for almost any Republican over Joe Biden, even Pence, who I don't like. I seriously don't like, and even and I have lots of problems with Nikki Haley, but I would definitely vote for Nikki Haley over Joe Biden. So I think it's for him to exit. The other thing he could claim is a health issue. He could say, my health is deteriorated, or get a note from the doctor and bow out of the race. And I hope he does that. I think it could save the country. It could really save the country. And I hope there are people advising him to do that. And I wish the Republicans in the Senate were more aggressive about asking him to bow out. Because I think that the potential for the Republican Party to be eviscerated in this election is rising. Now, I don't know. I mean, Trump could win still, right? And the reason Trump could win is because the left is so disgusting. And if the left keeps rioting, you see, the thing right now is that as long as the left riots, it gives a lot of Americans reason to vote for Donald Trump. The left has won this round. Step aside. Stop the riots. But they're not smart, the left. This is why the left will never rule. This is why I'm not ultimately afraid of the left. And I've said this many times. The left will never ultimately win and dominate this country. Ayn Rand said it. America will never be socialist. It'll never be completely leftist nuts. But the more elections the left wins, the worse the right will become. So I think the only hope is for somebody better on the right, for the Trumpism. I mean, my ideal outcome from this election, and I think I said this earlier, is Trump to lose in a landslide, Republicans to hold the Senate and maybe even gain the House. That would be the ideal outcome of this election. I doubt it's going to happen because I think if Trump loses in a landslide, Republicans lose the Senate. But that would be ideal. If the American people were smart voters, strategic voters, that's how they would vote. They would send a message to the Republican Party. Trump's kind of politics are despicable and unacceptable, but we're not ready to embrace the left. Trump never offered clear values because Trump doesn't have any clear values. Trump is a complete, utter pragmatist and always has been. What values has he offered? He doesn't know what America is. He never defined what it is. He's not for capitalism. He's not for freedom. He's not for freedom of speech. He's not for a prosperous future. He's for nothing. He's for Donald Trump's ego in a shallow, superficial way. And he hasn't projected any values. He's just sleeping around. He's for grabbing women by the... That's what Donald Trump is for. What values did he project? Now, but what is America First? He could never define it. Still hasn't defined it. After being president for 4 years, he's for America First unless it gets in front of his re-election prospects. Unless, you could argue it's Russia first or Turkey first. Or he folds to every dictator out there. What exactly is America First in his foreign policy? Again, read John Bolton's book. John Bolton, I think, is a traditional America First conservative. That's what he is. He's a true America First conservative. I think he's wrong on a lot of issues, but he is much more of an America First conservative than anything else. Would you elaborate on your views about Teddy Roosevelt? Sure. Teddy Roosevelt was the first progressive president of the United States. He was influenced by the progressives. And what does that mean? That means Teddy Roosevelt was a nationalist, which the progressives were always. So the progressives were the original nationalists. It was a feature of the left, not of the right. They believed in some form of American greatness, some bizarre, but not American greatness of the Founding Fathers, who they rejected and didn't believe in. The progressives were influenced by German philosophy. They believed in American greatness like German greatness, the greatness of the state, the subjugation of the individual. And that's Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt was a warmonger, didn't believe in wars to protect the United States from American self-defense. He believed in America as empire, war to build American empire, war to give Americans a spine, war to invigorate the American spirit. So Teddy Roosevelt, of course, left the Republican Party to establish a progressive party and ran as an independent after he left the presidency, or was voted out of the presidency, I'm not sure. But he brought those ideas of American nationalism, American empire, the state above the individual, the emphasis on statism and the greatness of state, the welfare state. He was a big welfare statist, again, his progressive origins. And then he actually created a political party around those ideas. So he brought them into the Republican Party, established them in the Republican Party, and then left to start an even worse party. So, Teddy Roosevelt was a really, really, really bad president. And he was bad before he was president. I mean, he was, in the 1890s, he was, I forget, Secretary of something, of Defense or of State. And it was just a whole string of really, really, really bad things. So it used to be my worst 5 presidents in American history were Teddy Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, FDR, Bush and Obama. No, I'm sorry, Truman. You have to put Truman in there, and then pick your choice between Bush and Obama. And now pick your choice between Bush, Obama, and Trump. Right? Probably Trump is worse than Bush and Obama. Is politicized an anti-concept? What is the definition? You know, I have to think about it. Maybe it is. I'm not sure. You're asking me off the bat right now. No, I mean, the way my definition of politicized would be that the influence of politics and the influence of the gun as a consequence are brought into something that politics is not naturally a part of, or inherently or necessarily a part of. That would be my definition off the cuff. Off the cuff. All right, let's see. Why does the left eat its own first, i.e. Weinstein? Well, because you have to purify. In order to win, you first have to purify the ranks. I mean, this is Marxist, it's Maoist, but it's every radical movement does this. You know, you first have to make sure that the people fighting on your side are 100% on your side. And every intellectual movement is like that. If you're going to be radical, if you're going to be the vanguard, if you're going to conquer the world, you want to make sure that the people that are at the forefront of this are all completely committed to these ideas. And your worst enemies are the people who kind of maybe look like you, but really you don't agree with. And I feel the same way, by the way. As I fight to take over the world, I don't want hangers-on. I don't want so-called conservatives, even though on some issues we agree. I don't want libertarian anarchists, even though on some issues we agree. The vanguard has to be pure. It has to be committed. It has to know exactly what they're fighting for. It has to be uncompromising. Yeah, the rest of the ranks, that doesn't matter that much. But the vanguard, the people at the forefront, the people who are actually leading the revolution, have to be really committed and really understand what they're committed to. Should rap be labeled as a low form of art? Why is rap so popular in our culture? Yeah, it should definitely be labeled as a low form of art. Why is it so popular in our culture? Because we live in a low culture. There is no high form of art in the world in which we live right now. We live in a culture where the best movies are shallow, superficial superhero movies, or just violence for the sake of violence. So what are the movies? There's a whole series of movies about the guys with the cars and they do the special effects, flipping cars and stuff like that. I mean, cool. You see it once, twice, but a whole series and they gross the most amount. I mean, it's low art, right? We live in a world in which very few people read, and if you read comics, then you're a big reader. We live in a world in which all music, rap included, is shallow, superficial, simple, focused on a beat. Focused on a beat. The most primitive of all forms of music, a beat. Boom, 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 boom. And one, I think, that conditions human consciousness to not think. Fast and Furious is the name of the show. We live in a world in which painting is splashing paint on a canvas. Talk about low, non-art and low. When sculpture is just a blob of stuff. Where sophisticated music supposedly is noise. There is no culture. The best you can find is on television, where we've gotten very, very good at depicting bad guys and evil. And the slow, destructive nature of evil. I'm thinking Breaking Bad. But that's high art, is when you can get to the point where, that's the best the artist can do, is depict the consequences of evil. There is just no high art anymore. There's no culture. We have no culture. Culture is achievement. The only achievements we have, and I've said this in the past, today are in business or in technology. Maybe in science. I don't know enough about science to tell. But certainly in technology and the application of science and business. That's the best our culture has to offer. On everything else, we have no culture. We have no inspiration. We have no, life as it could and should be, kind of Aristotle's definition of art. We have no should, could. We have Dumb and Dumber and Dumb and Dumber all over television. Just we idolize dumb people. We have reality television that a lot of it embraces the Kardashians. That's high art, right? There just isn't any high art out there. Even when people try to do figurative art, it's so often just posters, flat, uninteresting. There's just very little good art out there. So rap is just one form of it, and it's popular because that's what's popular today. It appeals to government-educated kids. It appeals to an educational system that doesn't teach you how to think, teaches you how to feel, teaches you how to fit in, teaches you how to be part of a gang or a tribe or a group, to cultivate your emotions, to be a snowflake. That's what it fits into, right? And rap is, it's a beat. It's got rebellious lyrics, as all youth movement has, and that's what people embrace. Do you sense a demented bloodlust underlying cancel culture? What is philosophically causing people to want to destroy people's jobs and securities? Yeah, there's definitely a demented bloodlust. You could see it in Antifa smashing windows and attacking police. You can see it in the cancel culture. It's hatred. What is motivating it all is hatred. Hatred of life, hatred of the world, hatred of reality, hatred of success. It's envy. Envy and hatred. That is what's driving all of this. And if somebody says that they like rap, look, you can like low culture. I like some country music, some pop, some rock and roll, but it's low. It's just not high culture. It's low. And sometimes you're in a mood for some low culture. Right? So yeah, the left is driven by, and I think many on the right are driven by hatred. Are driven by a certain bloodlust. They want to see blood in the streets. It's the same phenomena as you see you always ask the question. Any civilized person asks the question, how did the Nazis win? How did the Nazis come to dominate German life? Germans were just decent people. They were ordinary people. And how did they join in? Or what about the Russians? How did they just buy into the concentration camps, the gulags, the starvation of tens of millions of people, purposeful starvation of tens of millions of people? How did they buy into it? And you're seeing it right in front of your eyes. In a smaller scale. Not as ruthless. But if they're willing to do this to people, and they're willing to, on the flip side, on the right, they're willing to justify anything Trump does and are completely willing to lobotomize their own thinking, lobotomize their mind and follow everything he says, then why is it surprising that the Germans would do the same for Hitler? Or that the Italians for Mussolini? Or that the Russians for Stalin and Lenin? You're seeing it before your eyes. You're seeing the second-handedness, the collectivist, and motivated ultimately by hatred, by bad philosophy that results in emotional. Somebody said schizophrenia before. But what Kantianism ultimately results in is in the feeling of impotence, the feeling of insecurity, the inability to understand the world. And what that results, what happens when you don't understand the world? I've said this many times on the show. It leads to fear. Because if you don't understand the world, you don't know what's happening around it, you don't know how to survive in it, you become afraid. And when you're afraid, you start lashing out. I mean, look at the people who were on the chat earlier supporting Trump. They're terrified. They're afraid. And they run to embrace the nearest gang that might protect them from the other gang that they think is coming after them, without realizing that the people that they're embracing are just as much intent on annihilating them as the gang that's coming after them, because the gang coming after them is coming after them. But instead of standing their ground and defending themselves and trying to find others to do it with you, which is what I'm encouraging you guys to do, they go jump into the hands of the next gang. But what we're seeing right now is this: what happens when philosophy eviscerates the mind, eviscerates reason, and denies that there's such a thing as an individual with a mind. If there's no individual with a mind, what am I doing? I need to go find my collective consciousness as soon as possible. So I need to find my collective, and I need to follow instructions then. And if the instructions say I should silence somebody, then I silence them. I don't even think twice about it. They don't have pangs of regret when they do this. No, they have pangs of, in a sense, you could call it pride. They're doing what they're supposed to do. They're doing what they've commanded, what they've been commanded to do. They're doing what their philosophy tells them to do. They're doing what their fear and their hatred dictates that they should do. But it's all a consequence of irrationalism. It's all a consequence of a culture that doesn't teach them to think. It's all a consequence of their giving up on the mind. Giving up on the mind. All right, well, we've got a lot of these. Some of these questions I'm going to answer quickly, and hopefully we'll get to them in a future show. What do you make of the recent COVID spikes in certain parts of the U.S.? I mean, it's not surprising. Amish Adalja told us all along that the virus is not going to go away and it's around. I'm a little surprised because I did think, and I was wrong, and to some extent Amish was wrong, although he did hedge himself, that this was seasonal, and it turns out it's not. So it's big in Texas. I mean, if it's big in Houston, then it certainly is not afraid of humidity and heat. But we should have known that because, as I said on the show a number of times, it was really hitting Ecuador, particularly places like Guayaquil, which is very, very hot and humid, really, really hard a couple of months ago. So it was obviously, certain parts of the world, it seems to not be worried about heat and humidity, although in Asia, it didn't spread as wild. So I'm not sure why the virus has spared Asia as much as it has spared it. But it's natural that as we open up, as people return to life, that the virus will spread. And I always said it would spread. It wasn't like we were going to open up and everything was going to be the same. Social distancing does work. If you keep people at home, it will to some extent work. But at what cost? And who has the authority to do that? And then it's good to see that most of the cases are among young people, and therefore unlikely to die. I think probably treatment is better. Hospitals are better prepared. They know how to treat the disease better. And I think ultimately, so what if cases are spiking? As long as we keep the hospitals in good shape. Now, I do think people are also behaving irresponsibly, again, because the coronavirus has become politicized. So if masks help, why not wear a mask? It's not a symbol of subjugation. It's just a symbol of common sense. And the one way masks help is if you have the disease, you're much less likely to spread it to other people. And you don't know if you have it or not, because a lot of people are asymptomatic. So just wear a mask. And that way you won't spread it to other people. Asians wear masks a lot. And they've handled this much better than we have. But I also think the other thing about the COVID spikes is that it just is illustrating how pathetic our governments are, and governments in a sense of the federal and state governments. Again, you would have thought that we would have had our testing, tracing, isolating down, and we don't. And we don't. You have thousands of viruses in you all the time. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not, I don't know. But COVID actually causes you to get sick. Causes some people to get sick and some people to die. So there's a difference. I mean, it's that kind of attitude. It's nothing, which is problematic. Instead of being objective about it, instead of saying it's deadly to some people under some circumstances, there's simple ways in which I can prevent it from spreading and getting people who might die from it infected. And I'll take those simple precautions. We say it's a myth. It's fake news. We've got lots of viruses. It's the cold. It's the flu. Yeah. For most people, it's the common cold or the flu. But for some people, it's deadly. So if you care about people, then just take some basic precautions. It's not that difficult to socially distance. It's not that hard to wear a mask. But no, this is where I'm going to put the barricade. I'm not going to wear a mask, and I'm not going to socially distance. All right? Herd immunity is problematic because it's not clear that we develop immunity to the virus and how long it lasts. Also, you need about 60% of the population to have the virus. And if 60% of the population have it, a lot of people are going to die. Hundreds of thousands more people will die, particularly if the people who get it are old or sick. So instead of herd immunity, let's just live our lives with a little bit of safety, with a little bit of common sense. It doesn't take much. Better ventilation. Don't hang out with a lot of people in crowded places. Spend more time outside. Wear a mask. Take your vitamin D. I don't know. Well, 6 feet is a lot. 3 feet is probably enough. But let's make it 6 feet to be safe. Who says 6 feet is enough? The scientists do. Actually, it's 3 feet, if you really want the science. They tell you 6 feet because they don't think you're good at estimating distances. So they lie on the upside. But if you do 6 feet, you're very, 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 very safe, particularly outdoors, particularly in well-ventilated places. But just follow the common sense. But Americans can't, and then the government needs to do what it needs to do, which is test, trace, isolate. And if you want to get the disease and get the antigens, fine. Just when you have the disease, don't spread it to people who don't want to get it. Because some people are 85 years old, and if they get it, they die. So if you're on the path of, I want to get this disease, fine. It's your life. You can do whatever you want with it. Just once you have it, isolate yourself. And how do you know you have it? It's a test a lot. I really enjoy watching your talks at colleges and high schools. Do you have any interest or plans after COVID to do these again? Absolutely. I'd love to do it again. I've got plans already to start traveling in October, but I have a feeling those are going to be crushed. So it looks like I'll have to wait till 2021 before I can really travel and do those kind of talks again, or maybe even 2022. Depends on when they allow me to travel. It's impossible to get into Europe. School's out of session, university out of session. But once they go back into session, and once they allow me, I can travel. Then there's nothing quite like live events. In a capitalist society, would the private sector or the government develop tech and weapons for the military? I think the private sector would develop the tech, but under very limited conditions where they could sell it only to those entities approved by the government. So again, the government has the responsibility for weapons because it has the responsibility for force. And it would restrict how those weapons were sold and to whom, which countries, which individuals. But it would be developed under, I think, privately. I'm sure you've addressed this, but I'm new. What about the Libertarian Party? They just need to focus on local state offices and not act like a joke. But they are a joke. And they've always acted like a joke. And they have joke candidates for the most part in those local and state. And it's a joke party. And they have joke people running the party. Maybe their presidential candidates are often not jokes, but the people behind them are jokes. And as long as it's a joke party, that it's an anti-American party, that it's a pacifist party, that's an and has strong elements of anarchism and just wackyism. Wackyism is a term. Like the senatorial candidate of the Libertarian Party who took a pill and it turned himself blue, and another one who spat in the face of a radio talk show host whose questions he didn't like. When they get decent candidates and they have decent people and they act like a decent party with a decent platform, then okay. But I think there's more hope to starting a third party than there is in getting the Libertarian Party to clean up its act. Is the reason people are so confused about the concept of rights due to the fact that we use the word right to identify so many different concepts? Well, it's not. It's that purposefully people have perverted the term right to mean things that rights are not supposed to mean. So they've turned rights into the way they use right is wrong. They've reinterpreted rights in a wrong way. And we could give up on the concept of rights, saying, well, if that's what you mean by rights, then there's no such thing as rights. Or we can fight for the word, and I think we should fight for the word because it's a very important word with strong historical roots and with direct roots in our Declaration of Independence and in the writings of our founding fathers and in John Locke. So individual rights is something we need to protect and defend the original meaning of it. Today, nobody understands what it is because of the way it's being used. But the way it's being used is purposeful. The left has purposefully attempted to eviscerate the concept of rights from any meaning. And the right is, to a large extent, embraced that. I mean, Supreme Court Justice Scalia, who everybody adores and thinks was the genius of our time, thought rights were nonsense on stilts. Intellectually was opposed to the idea of rights. So the right and the left are opposed to individual rights, as John Locke and as it defined them, and as later Ayn Rand improved on the definition of them. Looking for art for my first apartment to add some life and vibrancy to it. The walls are white. Any paintings and websites I should check out? I mean, I would look at primarily the 19th century. There's a lot of good art in the 19th century. There's a lot of great paintings. And there's a lot of posters, cheap, that are reasonably priced, that are very cheap. And as I've said before, it's better to put reproductions up than nothing at all if you can't afford originals. But there's tons of it. And I don't have a website right now. But depends what you like. But just look for romantic art online. Look for 19th century art online. And just scour around and search for stuff that you like. It has to be stuff that you like. How do you solve selfishness when it's so viscerally opposed? Well, you have to sell it. You have to argue for it. You have to define it. You have to fight for it. You have to fight for it. It's viscerally opposed. You have to viscerally protect it. You have to viscerally fight for it. But rationally so, giving good examples, good explanations. I'll do more shows on selfishness, and you can see how I do it. Hi, keep fighting. You mentioned a few shows ago that defined benefit pensions lead to corruption. Can you elaborate? Yeah, I mean, defined benefit pensions in the public sector. So think about this. Policemen, firemen, teachers all have defined benefits. And they constantly lobby politicians for higher benefits. The politicians decide because they're the employers. And the politicians give them those benefits because they want their votes. And who pays for those benefits? Well, by the time those benefits have to be paid out, the politician's not in office anymore. The pension might be bankrupt. And then who bails out the pension? The taxpayers. And the politician's not there anymore. So I don't believe you can have, it's moral to have a pension system that is backed by taxpayers. The only appropriate pension is a 401k-like arrangement, where it's basically part of your salary. And you get to invest it, and whatever rewards you get when you retire, a consequence of your investment. But if I promise you to get 3 times your salary, or 2 times your salary, or 1 time your salary, or whatever it is, then taxpayers are backing it up, even if the money's invested poorly, which it often is, because it's run by, the investment funds are run by politicians. Or the benefits keep increasing because it's politicians giving you that, and you're a powerful voting bloc. So I'm very much against public defined benefits pension plan, but I'm also against them in the private sector, but that's a whole different story. Primarily because what if the company goes bankrupt? What if the company mismanages the investments? Why not just leave individuals to manage their own pensions? Which is what defined contribution plans are. Do you think the reason so many people don't understand the concept of, oh, we did that already. All right. Years ago, during my intellectual development, I was going down the mental drain of the right when trying to leave the ideas of the left. Ayn Rand saved my mind. I will never forget it. Good. And absolutely right. And I know a lot of people like that. A lot of people who threw away the left in the name and went to the right, but then realized that it was just as bad, and luckily discovered Ayn Rand, and she saved them from both. And that's what she is. She's neither right nor left. And that's what needs to be understood. And it's in that name, and then in the name of neither right nor left, in the name of individual rights, in the name of individualism and reason, that we need a new political, cultural movement. Cultural, I emphasize culture because culture is important. We need a cultural movement. Matt says he discovered me. And hopefully I am, your introduction into Ayn Rand, right? I'm your gateway drug. That's terrible. Somebody's going to turn that into a meme. I am your introduction into Ayn Rand. Since America's crumbling, what can business do to grow? Innovate, increase productivity, same thing you do anywhere, and advocate for increased globalization, not reduction in globalization, increased trade so you can benefit from a global market, not just an American market. What are the methods you believe are effective to keep employees motivated and politics out of work in a mixed environment? Don't get caught up in politics. Don't buy into the political correct. Don't put out a statement supporting Black Lives Matter. Just don't either way. Just stay out of it. Just don't, as a corporate entity, take on a political guise. You can say, I'm against racism. I'm against irrationality. I'm against, but don't pick up any political mantle. And then motivate employees around their job, around the work they're doing, around the way they're changing the world, around the value they're creating, around the wages that they're earning, but the value they're creating. That's how you motivate them. This is how you're changing the world. This is how you're making your lives better and all these other people's lives better. Yaron, if Trump isn't the answer, who is? Trump isn't the answer, period. Who is? I don't know. Nobody in politics today, maybe. Maybe anybody but Trump. But Trump is not the answer. And it's not, if Trump isn't the answer, then it's Armageddon. No, if you come to accept that Trump is not the answer, then you start looking for something better. Maybe you start a movement to find somebody better. Maybe you start a movement to recruit somebody better. Maybe you start a movement to replace both left and right. But you can't say, well, because there's no answer, I'm going to go with Trump. No. Because then you've lost. Then civilization crumbles. Civilization is lost. Civilization cannot succeed. You have to accept the fact that the two political parties are bankrupt, gone, finished, kaput, worthless, worse than worthless, dangerous. And I don't think the Libertarian Party is redeemable. So you have to start a new movement. You have to start something new. And it's not about politics as a first. You have to build a movement. You have to build a group of people who are going to vote with you. And the Libertarian Party is not going to get more than 3 to 5% of the vote. Even though in this election they should get 20, but they're not going to. So you need to build a movement that can get 20, 30% of the vote to be a real force in American culture. Oh, all right. I'm tired, guys. I'm tired. It's almost 2 hours. You're getting me to do longer and longer shows. And this show, I put out a lot of energy in this show. I hope you appreciate that. But look, I'm serious about what I said earlier. I'm looking for a few good men and women. Young, I hope, with energy, who actually care about the future of this country because they care about the future of their lives. The future of their lives sounds bad. They care about their lives. I'm looking for a few good men and women to start a radical, cultural, and ultimately political movement that stands for individualism. It doesn't have to be an objectivist movement. It doesn't have to be pure. But it has to be pure with regard to freedom, freedom of speech, individualism, the love of life, and the love of growth and intellect and technological progress. It has to be the kind of movement that inspires and that is eager to embrace the world of the future. And not just embrace, but to shape it. So we need to find Generation Gen X's and I don't know, whatever generations they are. But we need to find that group from 18 to 35, 40, who have the energy, the passion to do something exciting, to change the world, to fight for that world, to create a movement. And I don't know what to do about it. I don't know how to create it. That's your job. And it can be superficial. It can be based on one gimmick, like Bitcoin. It has to be an intellectual movement based on ideas, on intellectual ideas of individualism. You can't have a movement around Bitcoin. It's meaningless and silly. You have to have a movement about an idea, not about a pseudo-currency. But to do that, you guys have to do it. You guys have to launch it. I'll support it. And you guys have to fight for it. And you have to bring your energy and your passion and your youth. And you have to connect to other people. And you have to be out there, not inside your head and not inside your apartment. But you have to be out there in the world fighting. All right? That is the homework that I leave you with. And let's see where we can take this. Let's start a conversation. Let's start talking about this. Let's start imagining what it looks like. Let's start thinking about what we can do about it. And see where it takes us. Us old guys will support you and help you out, but it's got to be a movement of young people. All right, guys, I am drained. It's almost 10 o'clock at night here, and I've got a full work day tomorrow. All right, talk to you soon. Don't forget to do all the things you know that you're supposed to do. And for those of you who enjoy these shows and who get value out of these shows, please don't forget to support the show, yaronbrookshow.com/support. And of course, we have to go to 50,000. Subscribe. Talk to you soon, guys. Bye, everybody.